welcome to another session of Clarity in Crisis. My name is Angela Gibson with Eve Speaks. So it's Angie Speaks with Eve Speaks. And today we will be discussing this part 2 of Clarity in Crisis, Financial Breakdown to Breakthrough. And our honored guest is Denny Mendez. Thank you, Denny, for joining us this evening. It's very important for people to understand what they're getting this evening. You have almost 20 years of experience on Wall Street as a financial professional. You look really young, but that's great.
Don't be fooled.
Don't be fooled. You hold the FINRA series. If you're in the financial world, that means a lot to have the FINRA series 763 and 65 and 24 certifications, as well as life and accident and health, as well, insurance. You specialize in wealth management, retirement planning, insurance management, and estate planning strategies. You have a vast knowledge and understanding of the financial world. And for that reason, I thought it a good idea to bring you to our audience, because many people today are going through a crisis, especially with the COVID-19 pandemic, and they need to understand how to navigate this period, which is very, very stressful. So, Danny, I also see here that you're always interested in sports, and a lot of your clients are impressive folks, people in the film, fashion, and music industries. But whether or not you're selling platinum or just to a regular person like me, small business owner, you will roll out the red carpet. And I'm sure that the audience, whether they listen live or on the replay, they will feel the same way. So once again, thank you for joining us. But before we get started, once again, guys, thank you for joining me in this session of Clarity in Crisis. Please be sure to ask questions if any come up that you can think of. We're going to try to get this done in about 30 minutes. It's part 2. Danny, I would love for you to tell the audience a little bit about yourself. What is it about you today that you are the most proud of? Where were you before you got onto this journey of financial independence and financial, being a financial educator? Tell us.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for such a nice introduction. So I'll tell you a little bit about where I come from. I grew up in Queens, Elmhurst, Queens. I don't know if anybody's familiar with New York. During the time that I grew up, wasn't always the best neighborhood. And it was funny, I had this conversation with a friend of mine the other day, how when we were growing up, the best that we were trying to achieve was literally trying to get a union job. And during that time when I was growing up, it was like being a doorman. Like where I grew up, if you were a doorman, you made it. You were like, oh, you're getting out of the hood because you have a union job, you have job security.
If you were a doorman, you're going to make it out of the hood. That was a ticket to being out of the hood. Wow.
That was the mentality where I grew up. That's how bad it was. And again, it was just a lack of education. Like no one I knew owned houses. Everybody rented. Like people that lived in houses that was someone else's house and they rented it out. So it was like home ownership was never pushed. It was nothing. It was always just security. Like get a job, make sure you pay your bills, and that was pretty much the end of it. Financial planning, I mean, that was never a conversation that happened in my house or anyone's house that I knew of. So that was the hard
part. Wow, what a leap you made from never having that conversation to now being a financial educator. That is so impressive. Tell me, how did you get to this place?
Let me say that's the hardest part. It's just getting over that mental handicap, if you will. I call it a handicap, and I was lucky because I ended up getting a job when I was a teenager on Wall Street. It was like just a high school job, like, hey, let's just work in this location. And I actually ended up getting a job through school, and it was in the file room. Like this is what you give a teenager that's working in a Wall Street firm. You put him in the file room. So to me, I still didn't grasp what was going on. It was just like, all right, I got to put these things in alphabetical order. And luckily, I ended up meeting someone while I was working there, and they were like, man, you're way too smart to be working in this file room. You should work on the trade desk. And I'm like, to trade what? Trade stocks? I mean, like, that's for the movies. That's not for guys like us. And little by little, I started learning. And I didn't even go to school for that. I ended up going to school for computers, to learn computer hardware, not even software, to show you how far behind my thinking was. And I was so not interested in computers. That's just what I learned when I was in college. But I was learning finances on the side. I was literally getting the books. I was studying on my own in school. I was studying on my own at home. And that's how I started learning. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. To me, this is just like math. So the best part about it was that I was able to just start learning little by little about how the financial world works. And I was like, oh, you buy a house because it has equity in it. Oh, you buy stocks because you're owning a piece of a corporation. And then that's how I just started educating myself little by little. And I wanted to share that. I was like, if I didn't know, imagine the people around me. I know they didn't know either. So I just started, spreading the word as much as I can.
So you started where you were and you built on that, which is.
And I built on that. So yeah, I started from nowhere, and I got on the trade desk working more on the operational side, but at least I started learning about how the financial systems work. And at one point, I'm going to tell you a story about how I started working with clients. So I started learning how the financial system works behind the scenes. Basically, I was sitting in a desk 9 to 5 in front of a computer, learning about the stock market. And one day somebody actually approached my mom at a bank, the bank that she was banking in, and they offered her this financial product. And she knew I was working at a firm, and she was like, oh, you must know what this means. Can you read this for me and explain it to me? And I really didn't understand it. I read it, and I was like, I have no idea what this is. I was like, let me bring it back to my firm, and maybe somebody there can shed some light as to what this means. And as they explained to me how that financial instrument works, I was realized, like, I know my mom's situation. I know her age. I know her income. I know this is not suitable for her. Why would anybody push this on her? As I explained it to her, she didn't do it. And that's really when the switch clicked. I was like, okay, if this is happening to my mom, this must be happening to everybody. I was like, I want to start working with clients instead of being in front of a computer taking phone calls. And that's how I made the transition. I was like, I'm going to leave the operational side and I'm going to go into full-fledged financial planning. I want to put plans together. I want to help people understand what options they have. Because I'm a big believer, if you know what the options are, how they work, you'll make the right decision.
Right, and that's a great transition because you had a personal experience. Your own mother needed help, and that's how you were able to get a taste of what it means to understand financial matters. That's where your journey really began. So
that's exactly where it began.
So, and you're right. Simply because you were working for a financial institution doesn't mean that you understood. It didn't mean in your case that you understood financial matters. Sometimes people be working for banks and various different institutions and still have no clue how money works. I mean, for the longest time in my own life, I didn't know how money works. So, wow. So thanks again. So let us kind of turn the page a little bit and let's talk about, when I think about financial goals and financial independence and just financial growth, I think I liken it very much to like building a house. And when I think about building a house, I think about the fact that you really have to sit and count the cost of what it takes to build a house, what you're going to need to build a good house, an enduring house. So from that perspective, I want to ask you, what is it that a person, the layman, the person who understands nothing about finances, they have never been on Wall Street, they don't know where it is, what would be the first thing to concern themselves with in order to build a strong house or a strong foundation?
Perfect. Great question, by the way. So I always tell people this, when it comes to financial planning basics, 101, two things we got to focus on: how much money is coming in and how much money is going out. That's your household right there. How much money is coming in, how much money is going out. Now, when you know how much money is coming in, that's typically you're working, regardless of what your job is, you're getting paid every 2 weeks. You get an idea of how much income you're making. Now you got to focus on where that money is going out. Now, do you have some debt? If you're carrying some debt, one of the things you got to do is get rid of that. depending on the kind of debt. If you have credit card debt, store card debt, you know, people are loving Amazon right now because they're home. So they're getting the Amazon credit card and buying even more stuff. So what's happening is, you know, some people are accumulating debt. So that's one of the things you must get rid of. But there's good debt. So you got to know there's good debt and bad debt. The good debt is if you own a home and you're here just paying off your mortgage, listen, that's good debt. It's helping your credit score go up and you're building some equity. You're raising your net worth. But when you're getting credit cards to go shopping or to buy stuff online, you know, that's lowering your net worth. And what's happening is those interest payments that you're making, that is going to make somebody else rich. So whatever card you're using, if it's Citibank, you're making the CEO of Citibank richer by paying interest to them. So who do you want to make richer? Yourself or
rich by paying interest? You hear that, guys?
There you go.
Help other people to get rich by paying interest, too much interest. Yes? Wow.
That's right.
Okay.
So that's a foundation basic. Get rid of your debt and know exactly where your money's going. Because a lot of people don't know. They're like, hey, I'm making $5,000 a month and I'm spending $4,500. I'm saving $500. Oh, I'm doing amazing because I'm saving 10%. But they don't realize they're spending another $500 on just trash, like things they don't really need, things they can wait till later, or they're putting things on credit card, or they're paying interest. And they might not think it's a big deal. I'm only paying $100 a month, $200 a month towards this credit card. But they don't realize out of that $200 a month payment, $50 is going to interest. So you're not really paying down your debt as quickly as you should. So once you gather that piece of information, now you start building the blocks.
Okay, so now, you know, so we have to get the bricks, we have to get the cement, we have to get the scaffolding, the roofing, all of that. Yep. Because we're building this house and we have to build it on the rock, not on the sand.
That's right. And the best thing about financial planning is that, listen, I always say this all the time. People lie, politicians lie, everybody lies, but numbers cannot lie to you. You know, numbers are what they are.
Politicians lie. Who else lies?
People lie. Family can lie. The numbers cannot lie.
But the numbers, guys, will never lie. So, from that perspective, it's important to, number one, get out of debt. Because no matter how much I think I'm making, if at the end of the month, I can't, the month ends before my check ends, then I'm in trouble. Or the month is longer than my check. maybe
that's right.
Right?
That is absolutely. So and you know what I like? Go ahead. Oh, second thing. You were going to say the second thing. So now once we have our debt under control and we're like, all right, I don't really have debt. I know where my money is going. Now we have to start focusing on laying down your foundation.
So my check ends, then I'm in trouble. The month is longer than my check. Sorry.
It's okay.
My
technology.
Yes,
so now we listen. Getting rid of debt is like you found your land and you're getting rid of the garbage. Let's get rid of all this garbage that's on this land. That's like clearing up your debt. We got the trash out of the way. Now we got a clean plot of land. Now we want to start building the cement. Or you want to start, listen, I'm not a real estate expert, so I'm giving you the best analogy possible. But now you want to start building the cement. Now what that means is that you start coming up with a savings plan. You're like, all right, now I need to figure out how much am I trying to save depending on what your goal is. Are you trying to buy a house? Great. How much house can we afford? Oh, I can afford X amount of house. I know I need to save $50,000. Whatever the number is. I'm just throwing arbitrary numbers out there. I need to save $50,000. Great. Let's figure out how much money you're bringing in, how much money is going out, and let's come up with a strict saving plan. Do you want to save that in a year? Do you want to save that in 2 years? Do you want to save that in 6 months? All depending on how your income level is and how badly you want your goal. I like to compare it to fitness because a lot of people want to lose weight. Everybody wants abs. And listen, we all know what we got to do. If we want abs and we want big muscles, we know we got to eat right. We got to eat clean, and we got to do 1,001 sit-ups every hour. But the thing is, a lot of people don't like to do that. Like, 1,000 sit-ups an hour sounds like so much. But you know that's what you have to do. Same thing with buying a house.
So we want the muscle, but we don't want to do the work. We want a muscle, but we don't want to go to the gym.
And listen, it's not easy, right? Like say you're driving a BMW, spending $1,000 a month, and you're like, oh, I can change this BMW and get myself whatever, a Honda, and pay $400 a month. That $600 a month that you're saving can go towards your savings plan. And now you know I'm going to do this car for 2 years, but I have the money for a down payment for a house. But people don't want to lose that nice little leather that's in that BMW.
So again, let me just review this as we go. The first thing is to get out of debt, know the difference between good debt and bad debt. The second thing is to have an emergency fund.
Yep, you definitely have to have an emergency fund. So think of it this way. Go ahead.
How do you decide how much you should have for your emergency fund?
Good question. So whenever you come up with what your household is, remember I said income coming in, money going out. So you got to really know what your basics are as far as your living expenses. You know, you got to pay for your clothing, you know, you got to pay for your housing, and you got to pay for your food. Know what the basics are and the absolute minimum that you need to live. Once you have that number, a safe bet is to have anywhere between 3 and 6 months of that savings. If you need to, you know, $4,000 a month, save at least for 4 to 6 months. And the reason we do that is that, and I'm telling you just the bare minimum, I'm not talking about the luxuries. I'm saying just to live. Make sure that you have that in savings because, listen, nobody thought that a virus is going to come and take hold and put everything on hold. I mean, so many industries came to a screeching halt. For those that did not have any savings, they are going through a really difficult time right now. And yes, the government says something. Go ahead.
Emergencies like this, like COVID-19, exposes the condition of your house, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. If you don't have
With all
savings,
the
you're in a
cracks
tough place.
all the holes. Say it again?
And that if you don't have savings and you don't have any sort of income coming in, you can be in a really difficult position.
Wow. You can end up.
But nobody thinks about it. Listen, when things are going well, nobody thinks about it.
Right. It's kind of like when I was younger, I used to sell insurance. And when you try to talk to people about insurance, a lot of people just didn't see the need for it. But then when somebody dies, everybody wants you to send, you know, to do the GoFundMe. And I'm like, okay, you had the opportunity to protect your family, but you didn't listen. Because we often wait till it's needed before we prepare, as opposed to be prepared on purpose. So what's the third thing?
Third thing, all right, so now we got our debt taken care of. We got our savings taken care of. Now we got to figure out what that next step is going to be, right? So we got our savings down. We got our debt down. Now we're like, all right, now we got to figure out how much we need for a big purchase. So I'm using this example of buying a home. If you know you need X dollar amount to buy a home, now listen, you already saved your money for the emergencies. For another COVID-19 comes in, you save the money for emergencies, that's on the back burner. Now you got to figure out how much do we need to put away or how much do we need to save every single month to come up with our next big purchase, something that's going to bring us value. When I say big purchase, I don't mean to go buy a car. I mean, it's something that's going to bring you value. So buying a home is one of those steps. So let's figure out how much home can you afford and the steps that you are required to save for that home. People say, you know, whenever you tell somebody, hey, you need $50,000 for, you know, down payment or to buy a house, $50,000 sounds like a lot of money. But so does having a six-pack. If I'm like, hey, raise your shirt, show me your six-pack, and you don't have it, you're going to be like, man, you know what, it's going to take me a really long time to get this. But what you do is you do the steps every single day, little by little. Right. Don't even think about it. Just take those baby steps every day. Because people are all so focused on, like, this is the end goal. I need the six-pack. I need the 50,000. And it sounds like that goal sounds so daunting that it discourages people. So break things down into little baby steps.
Okay, so I see here, let me run through this again for the people in the back who didn't hear. To build your financial house, you need to get out of debt, know the difference between good and bad debt, have an emergency fund between 3 and 6 months, you said?
Yep, 3 and 6 months is safe.
Find extra income. How do people just find extra income? What does that mean?
So it's not really finding extra income. It's more about coming up with a savings plan for our next big purchase, something that's going to bring you value. So let's say you already have your house. You're like, hey, I have my house. I already have everything. We're living in such interesting times right now that people are forced to be home. So one thing I tell them that this is not even financially based. I was like, right now is a good time to learn a new skill. Whatever it is, if you're let's say a receptionist, I'm just using this as an example. Let's say you're a receptionist. Okay, You know that typing is a big deal. You know organizations is a big deal. You know you need to figure out a way to master this computer if you're a receptionist or an administrative assistant. Now's the time to learn your skill even better, because I think what's happened now is that this whole virus has kind of fast forwarded our track to be more tech dependent, as if we weren't before, because everybody's hooked up to their phone. But now it's making corporations focus on, I'm going to keep this person home, because why would I pay for corporate space when I can just keep Angela home and it's going to save me money and I have the same exact productivity? So I think now is a good time for anybody that's at home to focus on building a new skill that's technology based that you can exchange for value later. Because if there's something you learn now
that's a good point. I want to interject here, because we can see this whole pandemic as a complete disaster or something that is completely adverse, but there's also this opportunity that is embedded in the adversity, which in this case, you're saying, if you're home, try to learn a new skill. Yeah. Figure out what you can learn and become more marketable. Oh, that's a great point.
YouTube University, you want to learn Excel? I mean, there's classes that are hours long on YouTube that'll make you a master in Excel. So just do something new every single day.
YouTube University. I love it.
So, but I think learning a new skill is huge, because you can take that skill and you can convert it to dollars later. It could be anything. Listen, you know, you like to make hats? Great. Learn about fabric. Learn about ways to make this hat that you like to make. And that way you can exchange it for value later. That's how you can start increasing your income, because hours for dollars is probably going to change for the future.
Okay. What's a fourth thing you would say in this house that we're building that we want to be sturdy, so that when the winds come and the rain and the storm and the wind, we are set?
Protected.
What is the fourth component?
Fourth thing, now we have our house. You built your cement, you put up your house, you got your beams up, you got your windows in. Now what you got to do is protect your house. So people do not like insurance, but let me tell you, it comes in handy when things come to pass. So I live in Westchester. I'll give you an example, right? I live in Westchester. A couple of weeks ago, we had a really bad windstorm, really bad. I mean, trees were knocked down all over the place. People lost power. And some trees went through people's houses. So think about that. Imagine you have a house and this is a major asset of yours. A tree falls through your house and you have zero insurance. You're forced to get insurance if you have a house, but let's say you didn't. Guess what? Now to fix that home has to come out of your pocket. But if you have insurance that protects you, guess what? The insurance company comes in and says, all right, we're going to patch this up for you. This is the reason you pay for protection. Insurance thinks while you don't need it, while you're driving a car and you don't have a dent, you do not like to pay your insurance premium. The moment somebody scratches your car or gives you a little bit of a dent, you're like, thank goodness I had insurance, because this here was going to cost me $1,000, but now my insurance company is going to cover it. So you have to look at your household the same way. Listen, if I don't come in and my income stops and my life is over, what's going to happen to my kids? I have an 11 and a 5-year-old. I need them to be protected. I still want them to go to college. So I have to make sure that if my income is protected, just in case I don't walk into the house. So same thing with the car, same thing with anything that you have that's value, you have to protect.
Well, most people think that insurance, well, I don't know if it's most people, but I think there's a general belief that insurance is only for, you know, if you're concerned about dying, right? Okay. And so a lot of people, especially if you're young, don't really think about death. Like, you know, maybe now things have changed because of COVID, but to get insurance now during COVID, I would think that would be harder, right? Would you say? I don't know.
So right now, the insurance companies are having conversations and meetings about how to handle COVID going forward. Because if you had insurance back in, let's say, February, March, or April, when this whole thing was kind of like unraveling, your insurance is safe. But if you're trying to get insurance now, the word on the street is that they're starting to put clauses in that, hey, if something happens to you due to COVID, if 3 months down the line you get COVID and pass away, we're not going to cover you. Where old policies don't have those clauses, absolutely. So I always tell everybody, if you have a family that's dependent on you, get some sort of coverage. Because there's ways to get cheap coverage. And when I say cheap, I mean inexpensive every month or every year, that at least is going to have some sort of protection. You can worry about the fancy stuff later, but just go for the bare minimum for now, if you have a family that's dependent on your income.
So COVID is complicating insurance. Okay.
Absolutely.
This is why we need clarity in this crisis.
Yeah.
So let me run over the house again. Say it again.
I'll say that again. I didn't hear you.
You were about to say something, but let me just run over the goals again for the financial house, where we are at. We're getting the cement, the wood, the roofing, the foundation. And you said getting out of debt is number 1. Having an emergency fund is number 2. Finding the extra income is number 3. Have insurance, which is really protection for your family and for your income, is important. Now, explain what you mean by protecting your income. Explain that for the person who has no idea what that means.
So people think of life insurance the same way as you just described it. Like, oh, this is something that my family's going to get if I die. If I die, listen, I'm no longer here. My family will find a way to make do, number 1. Or our community, at least the community I came from, there was like insurance, that's like a scam. I'm just going to keep all my money and, stuff it under my mattress because I'm going to need it for a rainy day. So when I say protecting your income, is like life insurance isn't just protecting your life. What happens is that if your income stops coming into that household, how does your household change? Mm-hmm. So if you're the primary breadwinner and you have 2 young children like I am, for example, and my income stops, guess what? Now my wife is going to have to figure out how to pay all our expenses, what's going to happen to the kids. I don't want her to move back to her parents' house. And I want the kids to continue living a comfortable lifestyle. Forget about the mourning and everything. Imagine the financial ruin that can take place. So when I say protecting your income, that's really what it is. If I do not walk into that door anymore and my family's in mourning, at least I know there's going to be something there that's going to continue that income and my family can sustain their lifestyle. I don't know, it's not to make people rich. It's just to sustain their lifestyle until they can figure out what the next steps are. So that's what I say about protecting your income.
And that's such a responsible way to think, right? You want to know that your family that you claim to love so much, in the event of you being incapacitated or not being here anymore, you want to know that they're protected. That's the whole point of insurance. Instead of running GoFundMe campaigns, you can be prepared on purpose.
Listen, you just said it. How many GoFundMes have you run into? I know I run into a whole bunch. My family has been affected. Like I know a lot of people that have been affected from poor planning. And imagine going through a mourning period where like, man, I lost this person. And on top of that, I have to worry about finances. First of all, financial stress is a stress that no one should be dealing with because it's so bad for the brain and for the body. Imagine having that stress on top of mourning. You can't even fathom that.
Right. And the 5th thing I see here is that you have to plan for retirement. Now, there's so many different subtopics about retirement. The 401k versus. Tell us the different kinds of retirement planning that exist.
Okay.
We don't have time to go into depth in all of them, but tell us, how will a person know what's best for them?
Very good question. So starting around the 80s, corporations started getting away from pensions plans and focusing on 401ks. And I'm going to tell you why. Back in the 70s and 80s, if you worked for a job for 30 years and you retired, that company is going to give you a paycheck on top of your Social Security, and that was your pension. But what started changing is that corporations didn't want the responsibility of your retirement because you're living longer, and now I have to pay out money every single month much longer because you're living longer. So what they did is they came out with the 401ks, and they're like, listen, it's not my responsibility anymore. Angela, this is your responsibility. You better start putting some money away in this retirement plan because when you retire, I'm not giving you a dollar. It's all you. So you got to worry about Social Security and your own retirement plan. Now, as far as which one is best, that depends on every individual person. If you're a business owner, you might want to do a SEP plan, which is for a simplified employee pension plan. You might want to do a defined benefit, depending on how much income you're earning. But if you're an employee, maybe a 401k is best because your company is offering that. And a lot of times companies offer a match on top of your contribution, and people don't take advantage of it. I was like, a match it's literally free money. It's literally the company saying, hey, please save for yourself. If you save for yourself, I'm going to give you more money on top of that. It's not coming out of your pocket. It's going to come out of my pocket, and I'll help you save. So people don't take advantage of that because what happens is, especially if you're not financially educated, you're making 100,000, this is how your lifestyle is. But if you're making 200,000, you raise your lifestyle. You keep raising your lifestyle, but your bank account still has the same $100 in it because all you're doing is raising your expenses, but you're not raising your net worth. So that's how you have to start shifting the mindset.
Wow. So if I have $100,000, would you say it's better for me to get insurance or invest it? Like, how do I know?
Totally depends on your lifestyle. So you and your neighbor can have two children, same ages. You and the husband could be the same exact ages as your neighbors, but you might have two completely different situations. You may be caring for your parents while your neighbors are going to get inheritance. So you guys are going to be planning completely different. So it all depends on your household. So it depends if you're looking, is that 100,000 for something for the future, or is you're like, hey, I have this extra money and I want to invest it for the long term. All those variables determine which route you should go. It's impossible to answer.
Right. So therefore, this should then tell us that we cannot listen to the smooth talker who tells you that one size fits all. It really does depend on my particular situation. So I would need a financial planner who not just cares about making money off of me, but wants to make sure that I am well taken care of. My entire house is secure. Is that correct?
Listen, absolutely. And you want to work with a planner that the way they earn their revenue is by you increasing your value. So for example, if you have $100,000 and your account goes to $200,000, that's how they start earning more. That they're not earning money just depending on how much you gave them, and they don't care if you lose or win. So you always want someone that has your best interest at heart.
Wow. Someone that has the best interest at heart. You know, one of the questions I wanted to ask as well is, for the person who is in debt, is there any particular strategies that you have in mind that you would direct them to if they wanted to get out of debt? Because I think that's the problem with a lot of people. They're so burdened by debt. Yep. And they're not really sure how to get out of it.
How to get out of it? So there's two ways to get out of it. So let me not say that. There's two strategies that are really popular. One is basically the interest strategy, where you write down all your cards or whatever that you have, and you list them from the highest interest account to the lowest interest account. And then what you do is you focus on paying off the one that has the highest interest. Because listen, that's the one that's most money is coming out of your pocket to go into the CEO's pocket, and you don't want that.
The one that has the highest interest, one second, the one that has the highest interest is the one that we should focus on paying off first. That's what you're saying? Correct.
That's one strategy. Okay. That's one strategy. The other strategy is that you actually list down your cards from the lowest balance to the highest balance. And what you do is you start paying off the lowest balance first, and then that money that you've been paying towards that lowest balance, you're going to take it and you're going to apply it to the next balance. You're going to focus on paying off that next balance. And once you pay off that second card or second debt, you're going to take all that money and apply it to the third one. And now you're kind of like doing a snowball effect to pay down your debt.
Wow. So you can start from the highest interest rate to the bottom, to the down, or from the bottom to lowest debt.
Lowest debt to the highest, correct.
Wow. Actually, I've never heard that.
Some people like the lowest debt to the highest, even though they may be paying a little bit more interest, because they psychologically, they like the fact that, oh, I have 5 cards, now I'm only paying 4 cards. Oh, I only have 3 cards. Now I only have 2 cards, and it makes them feel better, and that way they'll stick to the strategy. Because listen, if you have 5 cards, but your biggest balance is your highest interest, and you're trying to pay that off, you might not see that balance go down quick enough, and you might get discouraged. So listen, people are psychological when it comes to the finances.
You know, I think I like the one where you paid on the smaller one first, because it does do something for my psyche when I feel like it's like me jumping rope. If I feel like I'm losing inches off my waist, little by little, I feel encouraged. But if I'm looking to lose 15 pounds all, in 3 weeks, it's not happening.
There you go.
So that's good juicy nuggets there. We have to close out now because it's now 7:35. There's a lot more we could talk about. I hope you come back, because people are always needing to learn about financial matters. But is there anything that you'd like to say in closing that you think the audience should know about building their financial house and building it so that it endures? Any last?
Absolutely. Listen, remember, your financial household, and this is everything. This is your income, your debt, your savings, everything that you have. A lot of people get scared of it because they're like, I know I want to achieve this goal and I'm so far from that goal, I'm not going to try it. Break them down into tiny little goals. Tiny little goals. And then what you do is you can build on those tiny goals. Don't be afraid of it and write everything down. And when I say write everything down, I mean like a lot of people don't even know where their money goes. They look at they kind of scan their bank statements and they're like, oh man, I spent, $50 in Starbucks. I didn't even know that. But what I mean is like, once you know where your money's going, you can give yourself a budget. Just start small. Just give yourself a small budget that you can follow for a week. Then you go to 2 weeks, then you go to 3 weeks. Just do things gradually. Listen, it's just money. Money is a tool. Money is nothing to be afraid of. Money is like a screwdriver. Learn how to use it to your advantage. That's all.
Money is like a screwdriver. Just know how to use it to your advantage. I love that.
That's it.
So if you guys would like to get more nuggets of wisdom from Denny Mendez, who, like I said before, has over or close to 20 years of experience on Wall Street, who is very much qualified to be able to give you the insight and the education you need to get your financial house in order, please reach out to him on Instagram at Den Mendez. And you can also reach him through Eve Speaks, our platform, at Angie Speaks, or in my group, Angie Speaks Stronger Than Splinters. I'm also on Instagram, Angela Gibson Speaks. And as we continue to discuss this process of going from financial breakdown to breakthrough, be sure to stay on the journey with us and send in your questions. And once again, you can also reach out to Denny Mendez. Thank you, Denny, so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. We're very much needing during this time to make sure that we get our financial house in order. Have a great
Thank you,
evening.
Angela. I appreciate it.